Loving kindness meditation. Love is the life and feeling in the universe. Life without love is an empty shell. Rumi. I don't love myself? About 5 years ago, I signed up for a Tony Robbins 4-day event in a large convention hall in the Meadowlands in New Jersey. What a scene! It was a self-help rock concert with Robbins holding court. I personally got a lot out of the experience. Most importantly, I had a realization during one of the workshops. While I was making a list of items to work on in my life, I suddenly realized 2 things in rapid succession. I didn't love myself, and I was incapable of really loving someone else. This epiphany really shook me to the core. I then stood up from my seat and looked out over the ocean of participants sitting in this gigantic conference hall and realized that probably everyone in the place was swimming in the same sea as I was. They probably did not love themselves either. Later, I realized that this is the state of the human condition. And how could that possibly be true? Especially given that the Golden Rule is a core belief at the heart of most major religions and cultures, both ancient and present. The Golden Rule states, "Love your neighbor as you love yourself." If people do not love themselves, how are they going to love their neighbors? What is going on? And why is John Lennon's hit song, "All We Need Is Love," still resonating in our ears and hearts after so long? The song became a worldwide sensation in 1967. Because of this awareness, every day I include a component of the loving kindness meditation in my daily practice. I do this because I want to learn down into my bones and through my nervous system that I am lovable and that I can love. Love is at the core of our higher self. And for us to really live a full, happy life, we need to affirm that as often as possible. The primary function of this practice is to stimulate the part of the receiver to our higher self that resonates with loving kindness. The secondary function is to increase our ability to love ourselves and others, and that we are lovable in return. The basic components of this loving kindness meditation has been around for many centuries, and it's been adopted in many cultures and religions around the world. A good way to think about the power of love and how pervasive it is to think about its energy being the predominant feeling of the universe. What are the different types of love? Let's first answer the question, what is love? There are 3 different types of love. The first kind is physiological or sexual love. A second kind is romantic love, through which you make a connection with the ocean of love inside of us and within another person. This love is still centered within the context of personal relationships. However, it entails a sense of ownership. That is, the idea that a person is mine and belongs to me. These first 2 are primarily emotions. A third type of love is our innate or foundational love, experienced from the higher self. This is the love Rumi was writing about. Quote, "Love is the life and feeling in the universe," end quote. Amazingly, are you ready for this? Innate love is not an emotion. Emotions are fleeting. They come and they go, and they react to stimuli. However, innate love is at our core, within our higher self. This love is our life energy, which flows constantly. Now you still may ask, doesn't our innate love come and go? No, though it may appear that way. Actually, it's always there. It is our awareness of this love that comes and goes. We become aware of it when we quiet the ego mind and experience the present moment within the consciousness of our higher self. Since we're not always in our higher self, it seems to be coming and going. Our innate love is our life energy. Love is not influenced by external circumstances, and our true love is defined by the depth and expanse of our spirit, which some people believe is infinite. The hard reality is that when we are in our ego mind, we cannot experience true love. So when our ego mind subsides, our higher self takes over, and we can begin to live in love. The big challenge is that the higher self is covered over by fear that's being generated by the ego mind. One of the key purposes of our practice is to cultivate and increase our awareness of the love that pervades our higher self. The best meditation for building this awareness of innate love is the loving kindness meditation. Meditation. So I again invite you now to take 3 deep, gentle breaths. Now repeat silently after me. May I be well. May I be happy. May I be peaceful. May I be loved. Very good. Thank you. The benefits of the loving kindness meditation. Throughout the JTE meditative practice, we weave in the loving kindness meditation as a way to reprogram a lot of negative conditioning, which has been created in our lives by fear, resistance, and confusion. The loving kindness meditation will allow us to redirect our attention into our hearts, another key portal to the higher self. Consequently, you'll feel over time that more and more of your negative conditioning will be released, and its hold on you will be weakened. And within a few days of meditating, you will start to feel its impact. You might even feel it sooner. The quality of loving kindness develops as we repeat phrases of the loving kindness meditation many times over. As I mentioned previously, it is impossible to really love someone else unless you have love for yourself. The amount of love you have for yourself determines the brightness of the God of light that shines love out through you to others. Initially, it can seem difficult to offer love to ourselves. For many, the act can trigger feelings of shame and unworthiness. Yet, the loving kindness meditation is a particularly powerful practice because whatever we do not love in ourselves, we will not accept in another. The inner work comes first. We project out into the world what resides within us. Years ago in college, whenever my best friend Danny and I would criticize each other, we would say to each other, "Just hold up that mirror and look at yourself." And the full meaning of that phrase is this: what you are critical about in yourself is what you will be critical of in others. It is one of the most difficult truths for us to face. Whatever burns inside of us is what we project out into the world. The same thing is true with love. The great thing is that thanks to our inner work, we may open up a pipeline of love for and to ourselves through the loving kindness meditation. The overall strategy of the loving kindness meditation is as follows. First, start with yourself, giving love to yourself while allowing yourself the time to accept your love for yourself. Next, move your self-love outward towards other people. Once this cycle is complete, come back to yourself and do the whole loving kindness meditation again. It is also recommended to repeat some of the loving kindness meditation sessions until you start experiencing a good, solid feeling of love for yourself before you move on to the next series. As you're learning, a robust meditation practice is not simply about becoming more relaxed. A full meditative program is quite comprehensive. It takes time. The rewards are life-changing, and the practice will allow us to begin to live life to the fullest. The science behind loving kindness. There's a lot of scientific evidence proving the benefits of the loving kindness meditation for cultivating love, our core life energy. Barbara Fredrickson, Ph.D., the Keenan Distinguished Professor of Psychology at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, led research about this topic in the Positive Emotions and Psychophysiology Lab, PEP Lab, of UNC. Her book, Love 2.0, establishes that our supreme experience in life is love. Love is a key nutrient that gives us sustenance. In a rigorous double-blind study published in 2008, she clearly showed that the loving kindness meditation had benefits even for newcomers to meditation. By learning to quiet their minds and to expand their capacity for love and kindness through the loving kindness meditation, they transformed themselves from the inside out. They experienced love, engagement, serenity, joy, and amusement to a greater degree than before. The loving kindness meditation enhanced every positive emotion measured. Although the participants typically meditated alone, their biggest boosts in positive emotions came when interacting with others, off the cushion, as it were. Their lives spiraled upward. Their kind-heartedness, stoked during meditation practice, warmed their connections with others. Later experiments confirmed that it was these connections that most affected their bodies, making them healthier. The interaction between loving kindness meditation for oneself and in relationship to the people in one's life is the winning formula. We will develop more positive relations with our families and friends at home, and with our managers, our buddies, and co-workers at work, if you're doing the corporate version of the JTE. Because the loving kindness meditation creates a resonance with the love inside of us. This love will spread to every aspect of our lives. Even doing the recordings for the loving kindness meditation have had an amazing and positive effect on me. When I was in the studio for hours recording the loving kindness meditation over and over to get it just right. Considering these benefits, I was thinking that my job was one of the best jobs in the world. Professor Fredrickson also explains that positive emotions can ignite powerful growth in our lives. They do this first by opening someone up. A person's outlook expands under the influence of positive emotions. Put simply, a widening vision allows a person to see a bigger picture. With this momentarily broadened perspective and more encompassing mindset, we become flexible, attuned to others, creative, and wise. Over time, we also become especially resourceful. Little by little, the mind-expanding moments of positive emotion add up to reshaping our life for the better, making us more knowledgeable, resilient, and socially integrated. In fact, science documents that positive emotions can set off upward spirals and self-sustaining trajectories of growth that lift one up to become a better version of oneself. There are powerful positive emotions generated through our loving kindness meditation as we infuse our consciousness with wishes of well-being, happiness, peace, and love directed toward ourselves and the important people in our lives. Can you imagine the positive impact this can have in the workplace? Fredrickson's research has been further developed and tested through additional double-blind studies. She theorizes that positive emotions encourage novel, varied, and exploratory thoughts and actions. Over time, This broadened behavioral repertoire builds skills and resources. For example, curiosity about a landscape leads to a valuable navigational knowledge. A pleasant interaction with a stranger grows into a supportive friendship. Creativity with our coworkers yields problem-solving skills and outcomes. By contrast, negative emotions prompt narrow and immediate survival-oriented behaviors. For example, the negative emotion of anxiety triggers a specific fight or flight response to secure immediate survival. Positive emotions over time, by contrast, nurture skills and resources to enhance survival by broadened behavior patterns. The loving kindness meditation helps cultivate pleasant moments of connection with others, which expands awareness. Lasting and beneficial changes accrue in one's life. The improved rapport with your higher self cannot be overstated. Positive psychology. A lot of Professor Fredrickson's work was stimulated and supported by a new, innovative domain of study called positive psychology. It was started less than 20 years ago by Martin Seligman, Ph.D., a professor at the University of Pennsylvania. Seligman realized that the field of psychology had been almost exclusively preoccupied by problems and pathology. Almost nothing was being said about the things that people presently are doing or could learn to do in order to sustain positive states such as health, happiness, and well-being. Seligman's early research in positive psychology and his first book on the subject, Authentic Happiness, set off a flood of research in the field around the globe to explore ways that people can improve their mental state. And of course, a lot of research gravitated towards meditation and mindfulness, and quite a few did research on loving-kindness meditation. Meditation. If you again so desire, take 3 gentle, deep breaths. Now briefly scan your inner body to feel what emotions reside there. Happiness. Degrees of influence. In support of the results Fredrickson discovered, Christakis and Fowler of Harvard and Yale, in their book Connected, write about their groundbreaking research showing that an increase in positive emotions can create a significant chain reaction, enhancing team spirit, creativity, and efficient decision-making for almost everyone around you. These positive emotions can have both subtle and dramatic influences on our choices, actions, thoughts, feelings, and even desires. Their research has shown that the spread of influence in social networks obeys what they call the 3 degrees of influence rule. Everything we do or say tends to ripple through our communities and our companies and has an impact on everyone around us. The people that we directly connect with make up the 1st degree of influence. Next, the people that we directly connect with who affect others with whom we do not interact make up the 2nd degree of influence. Then there is the 3rd degree of influence, which is your indirect circle of people who have their own direct connections. In their study about happiness, it is shown that if you are happy, then there is a 15% greater likelihood that your coworkers will become happier. And the spread of happiness doesn't stop there. The happiness effect at 2 degrees of separation is 10%. At 3 degrees of separation, the influence of a person's happiness increases the happiness of his or her third circle by a 6% likelihood. Other researchers have documented that among network of inventors, innovative ideas seem to be diffused, also at 3 degrees of influence. When your company is doing the loving kindness meditation and generating positive emotions, there is a chain reaction and ripple effect which reaches in many directions so that the overall level of happiness and maybe levels of constructive love feelings improve for everybody. The positive emotions can touch us like waves from distant lands, which wash up upon our shores. Tight-knit communities provide support systems that are important to us in our journey and can help us shift from the ego mind to the higher self. This personal shift in consciousness shows what personal transformation is all about. In looking at the research of Fredrickson and Christakis and Fowler, we learn how positive emotions combined with love, the innate and supreme experience of our lives, can improve the quality of our lives immeasurably, and this benefit can continue to spiral upwards over time. Christakis and Fowler's research shows us how these personal benefits and expressions of love and positive emotions will endlessly ripple out, spreading throughout the social networks of your company and your communities to create a potentially amazing and supportive environment. The community reverberates the positive emotions that we have projected into it. The transaction is almost like an enzymatic reaction and illustrates that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. The whole offers strength. Where there is a strong bond of love, your companies and your communities grow stronger and more productive. This outcome is very exciting, and the loving kindness meditation is a powerful tool in this process to help make that happen. Stories about the power of love. Through stories, you get more than cognitive input about love. You get an emotional jolt straight to your heart. The first story concerns a high school teacher and portrays a secret power of love, appreciation, and gratitude. The Teacher and Robert. Some years ago, I heard the story of a high school history teacher who knew this same secret. On one particular fidgety and distracted afternoon, she told her class to stop all their academic work. She let her students rest while she wrote on the blackboard a list of the names of everyone in the class. Then she asked them to copy the list. She instructed them to use the rest of the period to write beside each name one thing they liked or admired about that student. At the end of the class, she collected the papers. Weeks later, on another difficult day, just before winter break, the teacher again stopped the class. She handed each student a sheet with his or her name on top. On it, she had pasted all 26 good things the other students had written about that person. They smiled and gasped in pleasure that so many beautiful qualities were noticed about them. 3 years later, this teacher received a call from the mother of one of her former students. Robert had been a cut-up, but also one of her favorites. His mother sadly passed on the terrible news that Robert had been killed in the Persian Gulf War. The teacher attended the funeral, where many of Robert's former friends and high school classmates spoke. Just as the service was ending, Robert's mother approached her. She took out a worn piece of paper, obviously folded and refolded many times, and said, "This was one of the few things in Robert's pocket when the military retrieved his body." It was the paper on which the teacher had so carefully pasted the 26 things classmates had admired. Seeing this, Robert's teacher's eyes filled with tears. As she dried her wet cheeks, another former student standing nearby opened her purse, pulled out her own carefully folded page, and confessed that she always kept it with her. A third ex-student said that his page was framed and hanging in his kitchen. Another told how the page had become part of her wedding vows. The perception of goodness invited by this teacher had transformed the hearts of her students in ways she might only have dreamed about. This story is poignant on many levels. What is fascinating is that the simple exercise of writing down positive things about fellow students, collecting them, and then delivering them to the recipients in writing ended up being one of the most treasured possessions that many of them had in their lives. This story is a great example of the value researchers uncovered that can be used to improve our schools, communities, and workplaces. Being in the right state of mind, you can probably think of another 20 great ideas just like it. Are we all so caught up in our struggles that we fail to share how deeply we feel about the important people in our lives? You read about people who grew up and were never told by their parents that they loved them, and how this lack created such a big hole in their hearts. And then there are some who were lucky enough to hear finally from their parents on their deathbeds that they did love them. They apologize for having waited so long to tell them. Maybe we're having such a tough time getting through each day that we cannot even think that a positive thought might help someone feel better. And we fail to tell others how much we appreciate what they do and who they are. This again is what happens when we are in the grip of the ego mind, which is incapable of loving. Gratitude. Much has been written and researched about the power of gratitude. I think the list each student received from their classmates was this giant burst of gratitude that kept resonating over and over again every time they looked at the long list of positive comments. Robert took it with him everywhere. Gratitude exercises have become so popular because we have such a negative bias in how we live our lives that we can go through a whole day without thinking a single positive thought. By doing gratitude exercises regularly, we can make a positive shift in our overall attitude about life. Meditation. If you again so desire, take 3 gentle deep breaths as you briefly scan your inner body to feel what sensations reside there. When you locate them, breathe into those sensations for about 5 breaths and feel if they dissipate. Here's another story about the power of the heart. The author is anonymous. Forgiveness and reconciliation. He had been a Foreign Service officer in India for a time, but he had then resigned over a dispute about the U.S. foreign policy. Then he started working in D.C. and Baltimore with young men coming out of gangs, in particular men who had committed homicide. He then told this story. One of these young men was 14 years old and lived in a neighborhood where, to protect yourself, you had to get into a gang. And he ended up shooting someone he didn't know to prove himself to his fellow gang members, a sort of initiation to show he was tough and worthy. These young men were initiating themselves on the streets, which is not the way it is supposed to happen in this modern world. He was caught and ended up in court. And right after the jury convicted him of manslaughter, and before he was taken away from the courtroom in handcuffs, the mother of the boy who was killed stood up and said to the young boy, "I'm going to kill you," and then sat back down, and the boy was taken off to jail. A year later, she went to see him in the juvenile facility and talked to him a little bit, And then she would periodically visit him. And she started leaving him food and then a little bit of money, and then started to make a relationship with him. After 4 years, when he was ready to get out, when he turned 18, she met him at the prison and asked him, "Where are you planning to go?" And he said, "I don't know. I don't have a family, and I don't know what I'm going to do." She said, "I have some space in my house, and maybe you can stay there for a while." "What am I going to do there?" "Well, I know a guy who you can do some work with." So she set him up, and he moved to her house. He began to do this work, and after 6 months, she called him into the living room. She said, "I need to have a talk with you." And he sat down. She said, "You remember that day you were convicted of murdering my son for no good reason?" "Yes, ma'am." "Do you remember when I stood up and told you I was going to kill you?" "Yes, ma'am. I'll never forget that." She said, "Well, I did. I did not want a young man like you, who could go around murdering people, to join a gang, and whatever reason, you still are walking around the streets of this earth. I visited you, talked to you, and gave you things, and things to read, and brought you into my house, and got you a place to live and a job. I don't have anybody because my son was my only family. I changed you, and you are not that boy anymore. But I do not have a son, so I want you to know if you would stay with me and let me adopt you." He said, "Yes, ma'am, I would." And so she adopted him, and he became part of her family. This incredible story just shook me to the core. Throughout, I was holding my breath, expecting the worst to happen, but it turned out for the best. This story reminds me of the organization I worked with briefly in Israel, the Family Circle, whose members are Jewish and Palestinian families who've lost their family members to violence and civil struggle. They promote forgiveness and love as an alternative to hatred and revenge, teaching people that peace is still possible. Their message is so powerful because if people in such extreme situations are able to forgive, then no one has a valid excuse not to forgive. This grieving mother in our story also shows the power of love and forgiveness. It also seems that if you have love to give and you are connected to spirit, then the ability to connect to other people to create peace, regardless of the loss or pain that has been endured, has no limits. Meditation. I now invite you to take 3 gentle, deep breaths and feel the sensations in your body. Now think about someone you need to connect with and imagine a bond of affection. And if you can make it a bond of love, do that. Now think about the next course of action to heal this wound. Now I invite you to take 3 more gentle breaths. letting loving kindness ripple outwards. At the start of the loving kindness meditation, we expand our awareness in a personal way within our own inner consciousness and bodies. Then the loving kindness meditation involves expanding our awareness from the individual to the group, continually expanding out to the heavens. Here we will extend loving kindness sequentially to your whole company or your local community, toward all sentient beings on the planet, and finally to the whole universe. Sentient beings are beings that have the capacity to feel, perceive, or experience subjectively. With regard to the loving kindness meditation, it is obvious that extending compassion to larger circles beyond ourselves is beneficial. Christakis and Fowler's study, as we've seen, shows how our emotions, and specifically happiness, ripple all the way out to people who are 3 degrees of separation away from us. How powerful are our feelings and the things we think about in affecting so many people around us. Another famous study showed that we are connected by only 6 degrees of separation to almost any person in the world. If we double the extent of our happiness impact as determined from Christakis and Fowler's study and go from 3 degrees of separation to 6, then our planet really starts to act like a small village. Know thyself. In ancient Greece, there was a temple which was considered the center of the world that housed the Oracle of Delphi, where leaders throughout the Greek world would come to consult with the oracle before making important decisions. When the leaders' emissaries would enter the temple, they would look up at the phrase that was inscribed above the doorway to the temple, which read, "Know thyself." The following poem is a little mysterious, but it ties into the importance of knowing yourself. To really know your inner self requires that you drop your barriers of self-doubt, self-hatred, and pain. You are a stranger to yourself until you learn to recognize the stranger as yourself, and then to love yourself without judgment and with full acceptance. Love after love. The time will come when, with elation, you will greet yourself arriving at your own door, in your own mirror, and each will smile at the other's welcome and say, "Sit here, eat." You will love again the stranger who was yourself. Give wine, give bread, give back your heart to itself, to the stranger who has loved you all your life, whom you ignored for another, who knows you by heart. Take down the love letters from the bookshelf, the photographs, the desperate notes. Peel your own image from the mirror. Sit. Feast on your life. By Derek Walcott. Remember that the foundation of loving others is that you love yourself, even when you seem to be estranged. You do so by connecting with your higher self and the infinite love within you. Through the inner work, you can get to know yourself better and work through the issues that prevent you from living your own life. Love is community. How can love be integrated personally and in one's family, communities, and companies? The South African Archbishop Desmond Tutu explains the interdependence of the person's well-being with that of the community. In Africa, recognition of our interdependence is called Ubuntu. So when you ask someone, "How are you?" the reply you get is in the plural, even when you're speaking to one person. A man would say, "We are well," or "We are not well." He himself might be quite well, but his grandmother is not well, so he's not well either. This story gives another great example of how people's hearts resonate with others in the same way that the unplucked strings of a violin will vibrate with the sounds of a violin played nearby. A sense of compassion, which is love in action, is the capacity to understand or feel what another person is experiencing from the other person's frame of reference. Compassion involves the capacity to place oneself in another person's shoes. This quality is widespread in Africa. Right after the 9/11 attack, I helped design and implement a bridge-building workshop, which was to facilitate connections between the Arab and Jewish communities, both in the USA and in the Middle East. While there are many designs for such a workshop, the most effective exercise is to help people to understand the positions of the other side by walking in the other person's shoes. To facilitate compassion is the only effective tool for successful bridge building, because compassion is love with the added motivation to act and reach out to the other person or persons in need. Rational approaches do not work by themselves. Meditation. If you so desire, take 3 gentle deep breaths as you briefly scan your inner body to feel what sensations reside there. Now think of someone you have a dispute with and take a moment to walk in their shoes and imagine what they are feeling. Then feel compassion. Now take a few more deep breaths and relax. Great, thank you. Loving awareness. Sometimes it is nice to be conscious that we're loving awareness at our core. Every day at 11 a.m., I give myself a reminder to state out loud, I am loving awareness. Our loving kindness meditation also helps us to bring these qualities into full awareness. Actually, the infinite love that we imagine or experience in our meditation really comes from our love essence. The loving kindness meditation allows us the opportunity to bring out that love at will. This infinite love is real and does not just come out of our imagination. Your imagination is just a conduit through which your true love can emerge. In addition, the desire to give love away and share it reflects the quality of compassion that is also a part of our essential being. There was a study done a few years ago with 200 college students. The group was split into 2 100-person groups. Each was given $20. One group was told to buy something for themselves, and the other group was told to buy something for another person. Everyone was measured for their level of happiness at the beginning of the trial to determine a baseline. At the end of the trial, both groups were measured again, and guess what? The group that gave the money as a gift to someone else was significantly happier. This study has 2 sides to it. The first is that it's uplifting to see evidence that we become happier when we give to others compared to buying something for ourselves. The sad part of this research is that so much of our society is about buying things for ourselves with the expectation that those things will make us happier. The result of this misunderstanding is that there's so much hoarding going on in this world that those who do not have power are not left with enough to eat nor to live properly. We have an unfortunate distribution of wealth because of a misunderstanding of what really makes us happy. The following story is also about the heart by Alan Wallace, a leading meditation teacher in the West. Imagine walking along a sidewalk with your arms full of groceries, and someone roughly bumps into you so that you fall, and your groceries are strewn over the ground. As you rise up from the puddle of broken eggs and tomato juice, you're ready to shout out, "You idiot! What's wrong with you? Are you blind?" But just before you can catch your breath to speak, you see that the person who bumped into you is actually blind. He, too, is sprawled in the spilled groceries, and your anger vanishes in an instant, to be replaced by sympathetic concern. Are you hurt? Can I help you up? In a lot of ways, we are walking through our lives blind to our own reality. We bump into illusions all the time. We deal with people from a place of fear instead of from love. We interact with others not from our hearts, but from our chattering mind that's not grounded in reality. We live behind veils of illusions that meditation can make more transparent so that we eventually can be fully in touch with our higher self and become free. When we clearly realize that a lot of disharmony and misery in the world stems from ignorance and confusion, we can open the door wide to wisdom, compassion, and love within us, and be no longer part of the problem, but part of the solution. Meditation. I now invite you to say silently to yourself after me, "May I be well. May I be happy. May I be peaceful. May I be loved." And now say to yourself silently towards someone you care a lot about, "May you be well. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you be loved."